because you are a neurotic person who doesn't know what he's talking about or what humanity is. It goes against my insistence on talking and solving things, defending the right to pick on my foot, and constantly threatening me. You are sick with problems. It's obvious that you forced relations with your son's own girlfriend twice, in addition to sleeping with your friends' wives. I can't help but say this. The only mistake I made was the dishonorable thing you did while humiliating me. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is part of the suicide note that a young lady by name Aleyna Ağgül in Turkey left right before she took her own life. And in this suicide note, she ended up accusing the father of her boyfriend of threatening her, blackmailing her, and then going on to sexually assault her over a couple of days repeatedly. If you are ready for this ride, to also find out how the case played out and what the final verdict was, please buckle up and let's go. 20-year-old Aleyna Ağgül was a beautiful young lady living in the Igder province in Turkey. Up until late 2021, Aleyna was in a relationship with a young gentleman by name Gokhan Argin, who was also 20 years, just like Aleyna was. They were schoolmates and they were also dating. This was beautiful because it seemed like this was a case of two young people who were madly in love with each other. Love was in the air. But then things would take a nasty turn when one day Aleyna's boyfriend's father, called Gokhan Argin, would go through his son's phone and find some incriminating pictures of Aleyna. Allegedly, these pictures were of a nude nature, such that he knew that Aleyna wouldn't want the pictures to come out in public. So he got these pictures to his phone and then he invited Aleyna to his office. When Aleyna got there, thinking that this was just a case of his boyfriend's dad wanting to engage her on something, Gokhan ended up using these pictures to blackmail Aleyna and force her to have sex with him. Disgusted by this, Aleyna at the time was so devastated by it per the reports, and she threatened to go to the police. But then Gokhan insisted with threats that if she does so, people would also find out what she has done and it's going to bring disgrace to her family. Now, mind you, Aleyna is the daughter of Aleyna is the girlfriend of Gokhan's son. So she was actually going to be Gokhan's future daughter-in-law. So imagine how this goes. And Gokhan was also a very successful shipping business tycoon in Turkey, in that province. And due to his success and influence and money, he wielded quite an amount of power. So it was as though it's going to be a bit difficult for people to even believe Aleyna in the first place, and she couldn't report him without incriminating herself for sending such nude pictures of herself to Gokhan's son. So it seemed like Aleyna was in a fix, and Gokhan actually knew this and took advantage of it. So that wasn't the only time that this would happen. It became a practice where over time, Aleyna was being blackmailed by her son's father, by her boyfriend's father, and this father continued to take advantage of Aleyna and sexually assault her and threaten her also, sometimes through fake social media accounts. Now, it is reported that at a point Aleyna tried taking her life when this happened the first time, but somebody saw her and the police intervened. But she didn't let them know why. And then fast forward, in October of 2021, she would end up being found dead at the basement of the apartment block that she lived on. Now, it seemed like it was suicide. Police actually ruled it as suicide. And when they went to her room to run some checks, they saw that there was a suicide note she had left, which she had written with a lipstick, or which had been written with a lipstick. And the first statement was indicating that it was Gokhan Argin who is responsible for her death. So the first narrative was that he had driven her to commit suicide because of what he had put her through. And the second narrative, which majority of the people who were following the case believed, was rather that Gokhan and maybe his son Goktek had actually conspired to kill Aleyna and made it look like it was suicide. That narrative was suggesting that maybe they pushed her, but they staged the scene to make it look like suicide. Investigations were still ongoing, and at the point, both the father and the son were arrested. That's Gokhan and Goktek Argin. They were arrested, and then later on they were released. Now, in an interview with the media, Aleyna's family were insisting that it wasn't suicide and that she was rather murdered. But the police were still conducting their investigation. Autopsy reports came out, and it showed that Aleyna had actually died from the fall. But it was not yet clear in determining whether she was actually pushed. It looked more like she fell or she jumped, sort of. So that bit was inconclusive, but the fact was that she died based on injuries sustained from the fall upon hitting the ground. So the investigations were still ongoing, and mind you, Gokhan is actually a married man with kids. So how do you go and do all these things with your son's girlfriend, who is young enough to be your daughter? Because Gokhan was around 43 years old at the time. So he was released together with his son, but pressure groups and other feminist groups were pushing for justice, and of course the Turkish justice system and the police were not also relaxing. They were still pushing for more evidence and deeper investigations. But fast forward, in 2022, April, it was determined after a hectic investigation which spans quite a number of months that Gokhan Argin was actually guilty of driving Aleyna Ağgül to commit suicide. People came forward to testify against Gokhan Argin, with some of them indicating that they were actually victims of him in the same manner, and that Aleyna wasn't the first person. When asked why they didn't come forward the first time it happened, they said that they were afraid because of the influence and power that Gokhan Argin wielded in the community due to the money that he has. Now, he was sentenced to life imprisonment and also to pay a fine equivalent to over £500. But then, he is still not being left with that, because the police and the law system are pushing for other victims of him or other alleged victims of Gokhan from his past to come forward and present their case and evidence, so that if found guilty, additional sentences will be added to his sentence. Because in Turkey, when someone is sentenced to life, the person has to do over 20 years of it before he or she can even try to sort of plead a pardon in any way. So this was how this sad love triangle ended. And honestly, I find this very distasteful, because I don't understand why a man over 40 years who has a son and a wife would decide that because he has seen his son's girlfriend's nude picture, he is going to use that picture to manipulate that girl and then take advantage of her sexually and then continue on that as a practice. In fact, investigations will reveal that at a point in time, Aleyna was actually begging him that it should stop because it's not the best. But Gokhan continued, and when he was questioned in court as to his intimidation of Aleyna, he actually said that he didn't intimidate her to do anything, it was consensual, and that they were in it together. That even the previous day before his arrest, the previous day before Aleyna's passing, they had actually met together to get intimate, and that they had even gone to the drugstore to buy a pill afterwards. So you could see that clearly this was a man who was bent on his evil ways and was unrelenting in his resolve. Now his son, Goktek, indicated that he's ashamed of his father, that his father has dishonored him, and he has also disowned his father, and that he himself is also a victim of his father. There are still some few people who believe or suspect that his son might not be as innocent as he is portraying to be, and that maybe investigations about him should go a bit deeper because he might be complicit in this whole thing in one way or the other. But as it stands now, his son was left off the hook and was not implicated in the crime in any way and was left scot-free, whilst his father was sentenced to life and the fine that accompanied it. What do you think about this whole twist? Do you think his son is innocent? What words would you use, or what phrases would you use, or how would you describe Gokhan Argin, that as a future father-in-law, you do this to your future daughter-in-law to the point that it drives her to commit suicide? I think that he was being a beast, and nobody deserves to be treated the way Aleyna was treated. Leave your comments in the comment section. Hit the subscribe button if you're a returning subscriber. We thank you so much for your time and support. Hit the notification buttons as well. We'll catch you another time, and please stay safe out there.